Back so soon? Oh no, what happened?
A little incident at the dog park. We gotta head to the vet.
Oh, not again. These bills.
We can use CashNet USA. We can apply in minutes, get a fast decision, and have the money in the account as soon as the same business day. All right, Cheddar, back in the car.
When you need money fast, be the hero. All loans subject to lender approval. Speed of funding is subject to verifications and your bank's processing times. See CashNetUSA.com for more details.
Hi, everyone, and welcome to the Illustration Department Podcast. My name is Giuseppe Castellano. In this podcast, I talk to folks in illustration, graphic design, publishing, animation, and other creative fields about their work, the lessons they've learned, and the bumps and bruises they've experienced along the way. In this episode, my guest is illustrator, author, and educator, Jessie Kanelos Weiner. The path to unlocking your creativity and discovering your inner artist can be challenging and unclear. Luckily, we have folks like Jessie to help us along. Among other topics, Jessie and I talk about the healing properties of watercolor. She shares what it means with respect to mental health to be the movement. And no matter where you are on your path, Jessie shares 3 simple words you need to hear. I hope you enjoy our conversation. You talked about working with watercolor as a form of therapy, as a way of processing grief. Can you expand on that?
Yes, as a professional illustrator for 10, 15 years now, I think watercolor isn't just my occupation, but it's also a way that I'm able to release my inner worlds and confront issues that I'm dealing with personally. I'm not really an avid sketchbook keeper in a traditional sense. I'm into A4 sheets of paper that just expand all over the place.
Nice.
But in one particular instance, I was having some fertility issues and I had a miscarriage, and I'm totally okay. And it's in the past now, but it was just a really isolating experience, and I didn't really know how to get through it other than just documenting everything that happened, the funny parts, the sad parts, the inspiring parts, the dreadful moments where I felt like I was knitting myself into a new world. But I think through there I was able to look at everything and start editing the experience and saying, okay, if I were to break this down into 10 images, what would those be? How am I telling this story, either for myself or for other people? And it could be a reference for others who are going through the same experience. So I think through that process, I was able to find a visual metaphor, which was a moment when I was pregnant. I was playing a Joni Mitchell song on the guitar, and I was just really being intentional about connecting with this life that was within me. And I think just by visualizing that and giving it some giving it some weight and some importance, I was able to really decide that whenever I thought about this sad experience, I would think about that moment as just a positive visual takeaway. And so I think regardless of everything, I lived through it. I think watercolor helped me in many ways. And there's something about water as, the element that binds us all together. Sure. But I was happy I had that at that time because it really helped me process everything. And I've shared versions of this story with on social media, and people respond to it. And I think that's the power of sharing your human experience through art.
Yeah, when I was listening to you in another interview talking about that, it sort of brought to mind an experience I had similarly, but not with watercolor, just with water. Years ago, I was reeling from a severe depression.
Yes.
My sister-in-law paid for me and my wife to go to Mexico for a week. Keeping a long story somewhat short, the idea was, I guess, a little self-care on a beautiful beach was what she thought I needed. One morning while we were there, my wife and I attended an outdoor yoga session. Much of what we did while standing ankle deep in water.
Okay. I've never heard of that before.
Yeah. The instructor asked us to imagine that the ebbing and flowing of the water around our feet was pulling away any negative energy that we were holding inside ourselves. If you're not into this sort of thing, it can sound pretty hokey. I don't know if it worked, but I loved the idea of it.
Yeah, of course. And it forces you to be in the present and to feel those sensations
Exactly.
and to just completely submit to the present moment at hand.
Also, something that kind of dawned on me as I was listening to another interview you gave is to make art, artists must bend the elements. There's water, obviously. Any wet media, you're using water. Earth in the form of pigments or clay. Fire in the form of electricity and pixels or a kiln or a blowtorch. And air if you're using airbrush or a spray paint or a hairdryer. It's kind of magical when you think about it.
Definitely. Did I say that in an interview?
No, you were talking about water. You said something like bending water or moving water around on a paper. And that just led me, being like an Avatar: The Last Airbender nerd, to think about how artists are benders.
That's true. Yeah, I live in France, and I don't know if you've ever visited the Lascaux Caves, which have been
I'm not.
I think they're 30,000 years old. But you see the elements, you see the handmade drawing tools, and you see all of that really resonates with me.
Sure. It's something to think about. Speaking of thinking of things, your book, Thinking in Watercolor, A Daily Practice to Unlock Your Creativity and Discover Your Inner Artist, was published by Artisan, which is an imprint of Hachette for anyone who doesn't know. How long did it take you to get this book together? And how did you get it published?
I was looking back at my photos just to kind of get an idea of how long I've actually been working on this book.
Right.
And it's probably been 4 years since the grain of the idea came to being.
Gotcha.
But as we know, these things take time, and luckily they do, because I don't think I could have written anything of quality in the span of a year or a couple of months. But I think when you're trying to find a book proposal idea, you have to know what's going on in the world. Obviously, what's going on with illustration. There is some kind of wellness push.
Sure.
People are dying to heal themselves and the many struggles of this world. But I was thinking, okay, I moved to Paris when I was 22. I always knew I was an artist of one type or another, but I don't come from big means, and my parents aren't artists in a traditional sense. So I thought, I just have to open myself up to the universe and just kind of see how this plays out for me. So it really is inspired by me. I moved to Paris at 22. I had all the time in the world. I was an au pair. I was a little disenchanted by my life here. And I love to draw, but I didn't know what to draw. And so this really is guiding myself through this process of finding my voice as an artist, using my own world as inspiration, and really just practicing as much as possible, and lots of tips and tricks and hand-holding and encouraging words just to get moving.
Did you find yourself having to go back to chapters you thought were done? Because it takes 4 years. So after a year or two, maybe you've learned something else, or you rethink an approach. So you have to go back to a chapter you thought was finished to edit it or change it or delete it.
Yes. I have a very tough but fair editor. And so she has always had an exterior eye on the whole process as well. But I think the longest thing was just understanding the format of the book and how to tell the story visually. Right. And it's also information dense as well. But I'm also an art teacher, a professor for foundation art students at an art school in Paris. And so through the process of writing this book, I was able to troubleshoot the exercises on my students as well to kind of get an idea of, okay, does this work? Does it not? What's the value of this at all? And so it's kind of hard to articulate the whole process because it's been so long. But I don't know. You just kind of have to work step by step and hope that it's enough. And then having a really good team around you is also really helpful. How
did she catch wind of this book?
I have a literary agent, and so it wasn't the easiest sell in the world. My previous book, Paris in Stride, was a bestseller and reprinted, I think, 8 times, so that was definitely helpful. My agent took it out several times, and then my editor, Bridget Monroe-Itkin at Artisan, really liked it, and she believed in it, and so she saw something in it that I maybe hadn't seen yet myself, and she bought the book, and then it really started from there.
Other than unlocking creativity and finding one's inner artist, which, those two things are pretty great, What do you hope artists, illustrators specifically, gain from the book?
I think just a deeper understanding of how the creative process works and just really submitting to the present moment. And that I think watercolor helps with that in particular as well. I hope it helps artists, create work. Sometimes it's effective, sometimes it's not, but sometimes it's more about just sitting down and doing the work and then doing it for the sake of art. I think art isn't just about the final result, but it's about the sketches. It's about the napkin, chicken scratch sketches. It's about, the deep thoughts that you never wrote down. It's more about living and seeing like an artist and engaging in the beauty in the world on a deeper level as well.
Yeah. It's your 5th book, right?
I believe so. Yes.
As of
I've co-authored books, and yes.
Did you ever think in your early 20s while you were eating Nutella sandwiches on white bread, true story, as an au pair, that you would be a multi-time published creator?
In my heart of hearts, I would hope so. I had no idea how that would happen, and it hasn't been a narrow, non-meandering path by any stretch of the imagination. But when I reframe, this whole book about the advice I'd give to myself and the exercises that I really needed, I'm proud of myself and this younger version of myself too, because I think when you're on the path, you can't see yourself on it either. So I've been working pretty crazily the past 10, 15 years too, but it's cool. I'm still able to do what I do and expand as an artist and continue to reinvent myself and share it pragmatically in a book like this as well.
I'm still trying to get my first book published. It's not It's not easy getting an editor's attention. But as my mother would say, pazienza.
Yes.
Something you said either when we were recording, and I thought we were recording when we weren't, or when we were actually recording, coming to some conclusions about yourself, whatever it is that you're processing. Part of the reasoning behind launching the podcast was to help process my depression. Mm-hmm. The thinking being that through conversations with illustrators, I could give my brain something really healthy to focus on, as opposed to focusing on, harming itself. Through the years, I guess I didn't entirely know how that was going to play out, but through the years, I now see that it has helped me come to some very clear conclusions about how I process depression or anxiety or how other people do it. And I guess that makes sense, right? You just talk through it, or in your case, you art through it, and you're not avoiding it or masking it or pretending that it doesn't exist. You're putting it out in front of you privately or publicly. And that can be an effective, healthy way of figuring some shit out. Pardon my language.
Totally. I mean, I struggle with anxiety and depression as well. And I think, you have to find what helps you personally. And I think having a deeper understanding of yourself is key to to figuring out the keys as well. But I do a few things to kind of keep my brain in the right place. I've been focusing on doing cardio even for like 10, 15 minutes in the morning every day helps. And I read a good book. I pulled it up here, but it's a graphic novel. I live in France, so I read a lot of graphic novels. It's called Goupil Oufas by Lou B, who's an illustrator. My therapist actually lent me this graphic novel. It's a very French thing to say, but
awesome.
It's about her struggle with identifying her mental illness, and everyone was telling her she's bipolar, and she saw tons of therapists, and finally she realized she just has how do you say it in English? Just like she's able to access the high and the low profoundly at all moments of the day. So there was a certain medicine that she started taking, and it helped her just completely reframe her thoughts. And at the end, she comes up with a visual metaphor where I'm not the up, I'm not the down, but I'm the movement. Ooh. And I thought that was really resonant to me too, because I feel like I'm sure like you're deeply feeling because of being able to access the up and down at all moments of the day. It's kind of hard to live within the moment itself, but just feeling like, okay, I am the movement and that's my thing, and saying, okay, even in my new book, Thinking in Watercolor, there's an exercise where I visualize myself as a young kid feeling misunderstood and like I was just feeling things too deeply. But I think just the very practice of sketching it out, even if it's a stick figure, can help you say like, you know what? I'm able to do this work because of this, and I can't deny it. And I'm truly made to do this kind of work in my life. So I have to give grace to myself, past, present, and future. And I am the movement.
I like that a lot. I got to think.
I'll send you a link to the book. Yes.
Yeah,
yes.
please do. Yeah. One of the other things that I've realized over the years, I wasn't really aware of it when I was an art director, but now I am as an educator and podcaster, is how many illustrators deal with anxiety or depression or some sort of mental block or something other than the natural hurdles you have to jump as an illustrator, like getting an editor's attention or finding an agent or finding work, establishing yourself as a working illustrator. On top of all of that, they are dealing with, one illustrator I was talking to the other day has a really, really tough time just simply emailing art directors or posting anything on social media because there's a lot of that self-doubt. There's a lot of, fear of being rejected.
Yes, it's contradictory because, you have to have so much faith to create the work, but then it's, if you don't share it with anybody, no one's going to call you either. So it's difficult, I think moving to a different country forced me to, I think in France, it's all about rules. That's why when you come here, it feels completely a little bit antiquated and old-fashioned, but it's because of all these rules in place. And so I think that served me well was moving here, feeling like, okay, I'm just going to have to pick up the phone and call these art directors and see what happens. But I think if you don't know the rules, then you feel a little bit better about breaking them. Right. I don't think I can do that now, but it's a constant struggle, and you just have to continue creating the work and hoping that your level of talent reaches, the same level as your network, and keeping it up. And it's not just a matter of having one big break. It's about generating several breaks as much as you can. And it's not an easy path. And I think you have to be motivated, and you have to believe in your work more than anything. And it can be exhausting sometimes.
This podcast is produced by the Illustration Department, a global leader in online education for illustrators. Visit illustrationdept.com for offerings like mentorships and portfolio reviews, testimonials, our alumni showcase, our best-selling Substack, and more. That's illustrationdept.com. And now, back to our conversation. What have you learned as an illustrator that you could only learn by experiencing it?
Not starting a project before you've signed your contract.
Oh, no. What's that story?
Well, sometimes you're like, oh man, I can knock this out right away. Like, watch me go. And then it's just, it pans out and finally doesn't happen, or being too overconfident, that can bite you in the butt every now and then. Mm-hmm. If you feel lost, you're usually lost. I found as well, which a lot of young illustrators should know, where you feel like something doesn't feel right here, there might be a misunderstanding. It's usually best to address it right away before you dig yourself into a hole. Gotcha. Yeah. I don't know if you've I'm sure as an art director, you've probably had that kind of experience before as well. Yeah. What I found, what illustrators would get them like what's the tennis term? Unassisted error. Okay. Is that it? Is that the term? That doesn't sound right. I don't know what that means. Unforced error. Okay. An unforced error, where they basically make a mistake without any outside help. Okay. What I found, like the most common unforced error with illustrators when I was an art director, had to do with scheduling and with assuming that they were supposed to know everything. Those two things. Okay. So one, scheduling, instead of letting me know that they were going to be late, once they found out that they weren't going to be able to make a deadline
for sketches or art, the thing to do is to immediately email and say, I know the sketches aren't due for another couple of weeks or the art isn't due for another few months, but I can tell you right now, I'm not going to be able to make this date for whatever reason. It's taking too long or they have a life issue they have to deal with. That's the right thing to do. You're not going to get in trouble. You're not going to get yelled at. Actually, it's appreciated because then we have time to maneuver and shift the schedule to work with production. And then after that, the printer and so on. The thing not to do, which is what some illustrators did with me over the years, is tell me on the day the sketches or art is due.
Yes, I can see that being completely aggravating.
Yeah, unforced error.
Yes.
The second thing is assuming that they're supposed to know everything. And I hear this a lot with illustrators that I mentor now, feeling afraid of asking questions. No, you're supposed to ask all the questions. There's no such thing as a dumb question. Art directors really appreciate that. Even if you think it's something you should know, for example, how much bleed should I give you? Or actually, what's bleed?
Yeah. That's a big 101 question.
Right. It's like, God, I should really know what bleed is. Just ask them. Hey, do I need to give you any extra art beyond the trim? Yeah. Here's, this much. Thanks for asking. I mean, there's never been, in my experience, close to 20 years of being an art director, I've never, ever been asked a question in which I thought, how do you not know that? Never. Not once. I'm going to go ahead and venture a guess that most art directors could say the same.
Yes. It is an open communication, but yeah, I just, sometimes when things aren't specifically clear at the get-go, or if you feel like something is off, it's always best to bring something up if it doesn't feel right. Because sometimes with email too, the nuance isn't always there, and some things might get lost in translation too. I think when you're working in several languages like I do, sometimes it can be a little tricky navigating.
Right. Yeah, and don't wait. If something's anything, if you're going to be late, or if you don't understand what the art note is asking you, do not wait. Because the longer you wait, the longer you put it off, the more challenging it's going to be to solve it, whatever the problem is. Just like in anything in life, right? I mean, you're like, oh, I have to do this thing I really don't want to do, and it's going to take you 5 minutes, but you spend hours ruminating over it and postponing it and procrastinating on it. So instead of 5 minutes, it's taking you hours or days and 5 minutes to do it.
Yes, I think there's a lot to value too in just really clear communication as well. I think, even it's funny, in the last 10 years, people don't even address your name in an email sometimes. So it's just good to just have basic etiquette too, and saying like, listen, I hate it when I ask people like, do you like the left or the right? And their answer is yes. And you're like, okay, well, this means this has happened. So I don't know. I just think there's a lot of value in just, forming a sentence, asking your questions clearly and concisely, and getting what you need out of an exchange is really important.
Right. Well, to that point, you and I met via Substack because I did just what you said. I asked a question, you responded to it, and I got what I needed from that transaction. I asked you and a bunch of folks in the ID community on Substack to define illustration. It was for a post that I wrote called What is Illustration Anyway? Subscribe. How's Substack working for you?
Oh, it's a good question. I started this whole illustration adventure by writing a blog in 2010, 2011. I started a blog when I just moved to Paris, and I've always loved writing.
What was it called?
Oh man, don't go back at my archives. It's called The Franco Fly. And I just moved to Paris kind of indefinitely. My husband's French. We just got married, and I was just sharing my musings. And instead of adding shitty iPhone photography, I didn't even have an iPhone back then, I added little illustrations. And for me, this is a moment where something clicked in my mind, and I was able to really draw with intention and create more illustrations. So this is, the root of all of this. And so I knew my book was coming out. I started my Substack maybe a year and a half ago or 2 years ago. And I love the idea of people, supporting your work in a new way. And I love writing, and I feel like there's a lot to share about illustration and watercolor and all of these things. And I hadn't really seen anything like what I could do out there. It's been okay. You know, I think I had to lower my expectations a little bit and just, start anew and understand the platform. I think it makes sense to be there considering how much all the other platforms are being controlled these days.
Exactly.
But I just feel like there's such a flood of people on. Everyone is on there now too. It's just, it's hard to stand out, I think. What about you? Have you been able to find your niche a little bit, or
Definitely.
is it a revenue stream for you as well?
It is.
Okay. That's
It is.
awesome.
Yeah, it's worked out. I mean, I started it late January 2024.
Okay.
So it's been a year and change. And it's sort of everything I hoped it was going to be. I mean, and we're being honest here, financially, for sure. Certainly
Okay,
a revenue
that's
stream
great.
has been developed, which is nice. And I'm working toward figuring out how to increase that, if I'm being totally honest with you guys. Because, I have kids. Kids are going to college. It would be nice to have a little extra revenue stream there just to help offset some of that. Not that it's anywhere near where it needs to be for that, but it's, baby steps. What Substack has really done for me is help me be something that I never thought I really was, which is a writer.
Mm-hmm.
It's just helped me kind of, I don't know, be, like, to use your word, intentional. Not with watercolor, but with writing. And it's helped
I think it's
tremendously.
I really love revisiting it. There's a lot of things that got scrapped from my book as well. And so just, reinforcing your expertise and whatever it is that you do and having a regular connection with people. So, I mean, I'm not making a living off of it, but it's a little chunk of change every now and then. And it's just fun. And I think it's been a cool way to connect with other writer types and help build some buzz for the book and everything.
Yeah.
So I'm into it. I think it's okay.
Yeah, I think I'm being very, very, very stingy with who I follow.
Okay.
For folks who are on the fence or just started Substack, you don't have to subscribe to someone else's newsletter. So every page, yours and mine, we have what's called notes, which is essentially a chat room. People sort of describe it as a internal Twitter, but I don't want to describe anything as Twitter. So it's like an internal chat room. For any AOL online folks out there, it's like that. You can curate it down to I want to just see illustrations, and that's all I see on my feed are other people's illustrations, what they've written, things they've shared, newsletter, posts, whatever. And then there's the newsletter itself. So I could follow you, Jessie, but not necessarily follow your newsletter, which is okay because I can just see what you're posting on your notes or whatever. So there are options. People can get as deep into other people's writing as they want. But what I've done is I've been very, what I didn't do on any other platform. So I've learned from that. I'm being very stingy with who I follow. So my feed is exactly who I want to see, whose work I want to see, whose writing I want to read, and that's it. And that's helped.
Okay. Yeah, it's like everything. It just kind of feels like a content black hole at this point too, and
that's why.
Yeah. No, I get it. I think it's smart to really pare it down and know who it's for.
Right.
Yeah.
Here's the other thing that I really love about Substack is you wrote something about AI called A Hard Case Against AI. You wrote that a year ago. Had you tweeted it or put it on Instagram or some other platform, I wouldn't have been able to find it maybe.
Okay. Yeah, I think you never really know what people are seeing on your feeds, especially if it's something that you want people to see as well. You really have no idea. Even I was trying to push, I was hosting a retreat in Paris and I shared it a bunch, and even a friend had no idea because sometimes we don't even know what people can access. But I shared just a little snippet on Instagram about that. But that's the thing. I mean, if a platform like that, it's important to have a different platform where you can post longer form pieces about current situations and whatnot, and incorporating the visuals as well.
Right. So I found it. I shared it on my notes so people can.
I saw that. Thank you.
Oh, you're welcome. Of course. But one of the things that I really loved about the whole thing I loved, but you said I make a choice not to use AI in any shape or form, and you were sort of referring to why do we need to save time writing an email? Why can't you just take 5 minutes and write an email? Why do you need AI to use anything to do anything? Which I agree with. I am staunchly zero AI.
yes, I think there are lots of enablers of people like, oh, it's so easy, or it's so,
Right.
it's, novelty,
Good word,
or
by the way,
I can,
enablers.
I can use my AI to make an email more aggressive or more this or more that. But I just think it's lazy. And if you don't interact with your, I mean, how hard is it to write an email anyway? But
I agree.
I
agree.
I just think once you feed the monster, then there's really no coming out of it. And how much are you going to outsource at that point? I know a lot of writers who use it for their taglines and whatnot, but it's just a personal choice. I don't shop at Amazon and I don't use AI. I feel like I'm fully capable of doing everything that I need to do. So I'd rather embrace that and share more of myself and my faults and my grammar errors and everything. But there's a moment where you just have to just not give in.
I can just hear people saying, well, you use spell check on your Google emails, that's AI, or I do use Amazon, sadly, because, hypocrisy is part of my game, I guess.
No. It's just a personal choice and no judgment. But I think, it's just, so anyway, the piece goes into that I was working with a French magazine who I work with often, and the art director shared on Instagram that she was so happy that she was now using and illustrating most of the articles in the magazine using AI, including watercolor AI, which was terrible in my opinion. But anyway, we kind of got a little bit heated, but it's the first time I saw, an enabler, somebody who used to call me to work for her and to illustrate these types of articles was now using AI and just talking about how wonderful it was. So we had a little heated back and forth, but...
You gave her a piece of your mind?
Yeah, I did. And she's like, you're taking everything I said out of context. I'm like, yeah, but this is actually really alarming and I think people should know about it. So I'm not a confrontation. I'm from the Midwest, so I'm not confrontational, but I just feel like there's a moment where people have to realize that, we don't even know what's real and what's fake anymore. And I think we just have to keep fighting and realizing the value of artists. I mean, I don't want to get into it, but... No,
I know.
And this art director too is putting her name as the illustrator of these pieces and not, not crediting AI in any way.
Just when I thought it couldn't get any worse, that it gets worse.
Well, I'm sure her boss is happy. Even I thought about if they ever called me again, I would probably say no, I don't want to work with them anymore because it's just, And even it was a badly paid job too. So you're like, okay, I am officially squeezed out of the equation here. But at this point in my life, I'm pro-humanity, even if humanity is a little bit fucked. But the more of myself I can put in my art, the more of myself I can share in my work and my friendships and my life, then that's the choice I'm going to make at this point.
I love that. I'm pro-humanity, even though humanity is a little bit fucked. I think Mark Twain said that. I'm pretty sure.
Is that right? Okay.
Check my notes later. I mean, it just drives me crazy. I don't want to get too into like a AI weeds here, but just what are we waiting for? What are people waiting for? And by people, I mean specifically illustrators, and if I'm taking a little bit of a deeper whack, illustrators with platforms. Mm-hmm. What are we waiting for? Why are people still going like, well, I don't know. I mean, how bad could it really be?
Yeah, I'll just use it for my ideas, just to give myself like a quick brainstorm.
I only train my art. I only use my art. I only train it with my work, or something to that effect. I mean, there's like a dozen sentences that are enabling. I mean, again, I no shots fired, I guess, but sort of. I mean, I'm Italian, so I am confrontational. I don't know what you're waiting for. Not you, Jessie, these folks I'm referring to. Not only is it obviously theft, not only do most, if not all platforms own eternal licensing rights on any work you create using their program. That's a true story. Not only is it detrimental to our environment, to our just overall creative output as humans, not only are big tech firms angling to claw more of our creative output into their machines, which is what's happening these days, both in the US and UK. And we need to be aware of it, fight it, push back on it. call your representatives, etc. I mean, what are you waiting for? I don't understand. Where, I don't know, are we talking, is this just blinders? Is this simply these folks have had careers as illustrators, so now they're just like, whatever?
I don't know. I think it's a question of education and cultural literacy, and it goes pretty deep, I think, at this point.
So let's turn our attention from that negative bullcrap to something positive. What has illustration allowed you to do with your life, would you say?
So much. I mean, I never expected to be doing this with my life. Mm-hmm. Looking back, I had a few teachers who kind of gave me these little nuggets I should have listened to earlier. I studied fashion illustration in London when I was in college, and I had a fashion illustrator teacher who was like, Jessie, you should be a fashion illustrator. And at the time I was like, fashion illustrator? What does that even mean? I have no idea. Mm-hmm. I've been able to distinguish myself living in France and kind of find my own way. I didn't follow the traditional route of being an illustrator in France, but I think I've just had to make it work for me. I've been able to find visual solutions to lots of different problems, I'd say. I've just had a lot of fun, too. I think my work continues to evolve and to expand, and I'm happy now that I've put in so much time and I'm able to draw from my imagination instead of, using reference images. I don't know. I'm just really thankful that I've been able to make a life using illustration in all of its forms, and I'm excited to see what the future holds and how I'll continue to evolve as an artist, as an illustrator, as a storyteller, as a writer, all of these different things.
Something you said to me in an email that I wanted to just say out to you as we speak, quote unquote, person to person here. You referenced the Illustration Department podcast in your book.
Yes.
Is that true?
Yes, I did. Let me just verify because I can't. Yes, I did. It says Resources Illustration Department podcast.
You spelled department wrong. I'm kidding.
Oh, I spelled Giuseppe wrong.
You spelled Giuseppe wrong. That's more understandable. Well, first of all, thank you. That's amazing. I appreciate that.
No, but honestly, every time I listen to the podcast, even, as an illustrator, I always feel like there's some takeaway. It's usually about, trusting the process or, every time there's some little takeaway where I'm like, okay, I'm not going to go back to school and become a veterinarian or something.
Well, that's pretty cool. I'm pretty sure that's the first time that I know of, that someone has included the Illustration Department podcast or me in a book for references and or resources. And I just want to say thanks.
Yeah, of course. I think it's an important podcast, and it's very illuminating, especially for young illustrators to understand what art direction is, book publishing, all of these various angles, which is really important.
Checks in the mail. Anyways, what last word of advice or encouragement would you like to share with listeners from you to them, other than don't drink watercolor water?
Yes. If you love drawing and if you love illustration, hold that dear to your heart. It's not about the final product. It's more about sketching. It's not just art for the masterpiece sake. It's about all the mistakes. It's about all the time something doesn't work. And if you're able to lose yourself in the act of illustration until the early morning hours, then there's something there, and you shouldn't deny yourself of that. And just keep it up. Keep it up.
To learn more about Jessie and her book, Thinking in Watercolor, visit jessiekanelosweiner.net. If you find value in this podcast, you can support it by subscribing to my best-selling Substack. For $5 a month or $50 a year, you will access hundreds of articles on the art, practice, and history of illustration, unlock bonus podcast episodes called Extra Credit, and connect with other members of the ID community. Join me on Substack by visiting illustrationdept.substack.com. Thank you so much for listening. Until next time.
Did you know that parents rank financial literacy as the #1 most difficult life skill to teach? Meet Greenlight, the debit card and money app for families. With Greenlight, you can set up chores, automate allowance, and keep an eye on your kids' spending with real-time notifications. Kids learn to earn, save, and spend wisely, and parents can rest easy knowing their kids are learning about money with guardrails in place. Sign up for Greenlight today at greenlight.com/podcast.